tired of works on my machine problems when deploying fastmcp servers to Claude Desktop? You'll see how this fastmcp.json configuration file solves that by declaring everything your server needs in one place: the Python file location, entry point, dependencies, and even deployment settings. We'll break down how each section maps to CLI arguments, why the schema reference enables IDE autocomplete, and how optional fields like environment type default to sensible values like UV for dependency management. The pattern ensures your server runs identically everywhere, from development to production.
Schema https://gofastung.com/public/schemas/fastmcp json/v1 json. Source: path server pi. Entry point MCP. Environment: dependencies pandas requests.
This demonstrates the configuration as code pattern with a JSON schema that fully describes a fastmcp server's execution environment. The schema defines required and optional sections. Source, mandatory, specifies the server location and entry point with optional type defaulting to file system, while environment, optional, declares dependencies with an implicit type of UV for package management. The pattern's distinctive feature is its ability to version and validate the entire runtime configuration as a single artifact. The approach works by treating infrastructure as declarative metadata that tools can consume programmatically. The schema enables IDE support with autocomplete and validation, while the structured format allows different configurations for development, testing, and production environments. Optional sections like deployment can specify execution parameters, and the configuration directly maps to CLI arguments, eliminating manual setup while preserving flexibility. This pattern solves environment consistency problems by codifying all requirements in a machine-readable format. It's particularly valuable for AI tooling, where servers must run in isolated sandboxes, and for teams managing complex dependency graphs. The trade-off of initial schema complexity is offset by gains in reproducibility. You can spin up identical environments anywhere the configuration is present, with the added benefit of schema validation catching errors before deployment. Let's break it down line by line. This defines a fastmcp configuration object using JSON schema validation. The schema field enables IDE autocomplete and strict validation against fastmcp's specification. The required source block specifies the tool's entry point, here pointing to server, pi with MCP as the entry point function. While source type defaults to file system, you can override it for remote sources. The optional environment section declares Python dependencies, defaulting to UV package manager, and can specify Python version constraints. This configuration as code approach eliminates works on my machine problems by explicitly declaring all requirements. The closing brace terminates the root configuration object, which can optionally include deployment settings for different environments. You can override configurations via CLI or maintain separate files for dev/prod environments.
Schema https://gofastung.com/public/schemas/fastmcp json/v1 json.
This declares the JSON schema URI for fastmcp v1 configuration, enables IDE validation, autocomplete, and ensures the file adheres to fastmcp's specification before execution. Modern editors use this to catch errors early and provide schema-aware tooling. Only the source field is required, environment, and deployment sections are optional but recommended for production. The schema definition allows different configs per environment, dev/staging/prod, while maintaining validation guarantees.
Source:
The source key specifies your fastmcp tool's location and entry point. It defines the Python file containing MCP annotated functions via path and the main entry function via entrypoint. This is the only required configuration block. All other sections are optional. The source type field defaults to file system when omitted, automatically loading tools from your local file structure. This follows fastmcp's configuration as code pattern for reproducible tool deployment.
Path server pi.
Specifies the Python module containing your fastmcp tool implementation. This path, combined with the entrypoint field, forms the minimal required configuration. fastmcp uses these to locate and load your MCP function. The field defaults to file system-based loading when no source type is specified.
Entrypoint MCP.
Specifies the entry function fastmcp calls when initializing your server. This must match a callable, function, or class in server. Pi, that handles incoming requests. Required field that defines where request processing begins, following fastmcp's standard entry point pattern. This closing brace terminates the source configuration block, which defines the server entry point and location. It maintains valid JSON structure while keeping the configuration parsable against fastmcp's schema validator, enabling IDE autocomplete and pre-deployment validation.
Environment.
The environment key declares runtime requirements for reproducible execution. It optionally specifies Python dependencies, version constraints, and environment type, defaulting to UV if omitted. This configuration as code pattern eliminates works on my machine issues by explicitly declaring what the tool requires, while enabling different configurations for dev/prod environments.
Dependencies, pandas, requests.
Lists required Python packages for execution. fastmcp installs these automatically via pip before running your tool, ensuring consistent environments across development, testing, and production. This follows the standard dependency declaration pattern used in fastmcp configurations. This closing brace terminates the source configuration block, completing the required fastmcp tool definition. While only the source field is mandatory, the schema enables IDE validation and autocomplete, ensuring configuration correctness before deployment. The optional environment block would follow next, defaulting to UV package management and allowing Python version specification. This closing brace terminates the entire fastmcp configuration object, completing the JSON structure that defines tool execution parameters. It enables schema validation against the declared schema URL, providing IDE autocomplete and preventing invalid configurations. The configuration follows fastmcp's declarative pattern where only the source block is required, while environment and deployment sections remain optional. Default values apply when omitted. Source type defaults to file system, and environment type defaults to UV, ensuring consistent behavior across different execution contexts. Fastmcp configuration pattern. The declarative fastmcp.json replaces CLI arguments by separating concerns into WHERE, source, what environment, and HOW deployment, with only the source field required while environment and deployment remain optional. Default values handle common cases automatically. Source type defaults to file system and environment type defaults to UV, while the schema reference enables IDE autocomplete and pre-execution validation. Modern IDEs catch invalid transport modes or log levels during editing, and you can maintain environment-specific configurations, dev/prod, that run via simple command line targeting.
The configuration that names every dependency becomes the one thing nothing depends on.